be this random general dude.
It's an old dude?
He's like, the general.
Oh.
I'm assuming it's him at least.
Let me channel my
Or
inner
do you
general.
want me to just do it?
Step it up!
Be a man!
Rub some dirt in it. Be a man. Step it up. What are you doing? Slacking off when the fighting's so close?
Stars seem to spin around inside my head. I could just lie down on the floor, but that'd only make him more angry. I've got no intention of being obedient. Still, it'd be stupid to get myself punched for no reason. So I got up and stood at attention. The fighting's close, is it? You really think the American troops are likely to show up on this forgotten island? Then let them come right now. That's what I've been waiting for all this time.
What's this cowardly look you're wearing? Is this how afraid you are of death? Are you so scared of those Americans? You have been killing any of them with an attitude like that?
I got hit again. Could you please quit your whining already? Filthy cowards. They let themselves be controlled by this inexplicable anger because it's the only way to distract themselves from their own fear. Heart and spirit aren't of any use when the battle becomes hopeless. When trapped by an insurmountable hopelessness, humans tend to rely on several other emotions to escape their fear. For these young, inexperienced soldiers, anger was a very convenient emotion to fall back upon. Anger is the wine they used to paralyze their fear. It made them chant, "Damn the British, damn the Americans," as they swung their bamboo spears around and called it drilling. The more wine you drink, the more you need to drink to get drunk. The useless anger continued to pile up day after day, without pause. I did not fear death, so I had no need of the wine-cold anger. This made their cowardice all the more apparent to me.
What's that look on your face? Ushiramiya, you've lost your nerve down to your very soul. You're a fish, that's what you are. You've got the eyes of a dead fish.
However, it went both ways. Just as I was able to spot their cowardice, they were able to pick up on my lethargy.
Is Ushiramiya Kinzo here? The lieutenant's looking for you.
It's probably just a random.
Stand up! No slouching about! Double time!
First Lieutenant Yamamoto was the commanding officer in charge of the Rokkenjima garrison. He was just another filthy coward trying to forget his fear with violence, and would often reprimand his subordinates for slacking off at the drop of a hat. Whenever he was in a good mood and started spouting off stories of his life, they were all about how much of a thug he had been, ignoring the rules of society. Do you recognize this at all?
Wasn't this supposed to be talking about Kindo?
I mean, like, the background.
The pathway that Ava went down. Ava and,
I think this is, like, Game 4, when it was, like, QDA, Kraus, and Cannon and Shannon.
Oh, when they were trapped underneath, when they went to go try find Kuwadorian.
Well, they all got, like, transported somewhere, remember? Like,
Go!
Yes, it was a GOPS entrance, and then they were, like, in a cell, and then they tried to escape, and there was a big goat,
and the phone
and Kraus had a boxing match
and,
with them.
Yeah, that was...
Yep. I think this is, like...
And it was where Kraus started hitting on, like, Kyrie, and it got a little bit weird. We were like, Kraus, what are you doing?
Yeah, so I'm not sure, but I think this is the same background.
Okay.
We're using different sprites, but yeah. Whenever he was in a good mood and started spouting off stories of his life, they were all about how much of a thug he had been, ignoring the rules of society. On and on about how so-and-so was a prick, so he taught him a lesson, or how everyone was so scared of him that he got special treatment. He kept on talking about what a vile human he was, as though it was a badge of honor.
Ew.
Normally, I had nothing to do with this lieutenant who I couldn't respect in any way. He'd always hang around with his non-commissioned subordinates. So as long as I treated him with a snappy salute, I could more or less ignore him for the time being. Now that the construction project on this island had been suspended indefinitely, there's no longer any use for an engineer like me. So why did the lieutenant ask for me to see me specifically? At that moment, I couldn't think of anything.
Ah, Ushiramiya. I hear you're good with foreign languages. Is that true?
I am proficient, I'm not proficient, in both English and Chinese, sir. The lieutenant liked to brag about his education in front of the non-commissioned officers, but he held a bit of a grudge against me for being even more highly educated than him. Since he also felt uncomfortable about having a subordinate who was older than him, I wasn't exactly the type he'd be willing to confide in. Just the fact that I knew several languages must have hurt his pride.
What about Italian?
I don't speak that.
So you wouldn't be much help as an interpreter between me and an Italian person, would you?
It should be possible if they can speak English as well.
Ah, yes, very true. Have you ever talked with a foreigner in English?
I have? Why on earth would he need an interpreter in a cave on an uninhabited island that even our superiors forgot about? His question made it clear that some guest had arrived in Rikkenjima who would need an interpreter.
Good, Ushiramiya, you'll be my interpreter. That's an order!
That evening, I found out exactly what he was talking about. That pointless submarine dock in the cavern that had never been used was now being approached slowly by a submarine of the Italian Navy. Of course, I knew that the Italians were our allies. However, this was the first time I'd seen anything from their military with my own eyes.
What was the Italian Navy doing here? Didn't Italy surrender in 1943? What's going on?
It was the Kingdom of Italy that surrendered. However, those who couldn't accept that surrender joined Mussolini and formed the RSI, so that they could continue fighting.
The RSI?
Repetitive strain injury. The Italian Social Republic, also known as the Salo Republic. You know your history. The ignorant often call the Italians cowards, saying that they surrendered first of the Axis powers in 1943. That's not true. The military of the Italian Social Republic fought bravely from the outbreak of war until April 29, 1945. And Berlin fell just 3 days after that. Far from being cowards, they gave one hell of a fight. Still, I'm surprised the RSI Navy even had possession of a submarine that could travel all the way to Japan.
Even if they did, it's a surprise that they'd come out this far at all. Why would they come to Japan? To Rikkenjima?
The submarine was both weather-worn and massive. I doubt anyone had imagined that a foreign submarine would come all the way out here. when we never even have one of our own submarines dock. All of the guards in Rikenjima, of which there were only about 30, stood at attention at the submarine docked.
Never seen the Italian military before.
I heard a mine or some accident trashed their sub.
From what I heard, it sounds like that ventilator broke down and the cabin got packed with chlorine gas.
The lieutenant was hinting about there being something very important in there.
You mean like a code machine or the blueprints for some kind of engine?
I couldn't care less what they're carrying. I'm more surprised that the higher-ups still remember we exist.
Hurry up, Ushiramiya. How are you supposed to interpret from over there?
Yes, sir. On top of the hatch was a young Italian saluting us. Normally, this should have been the job of a commissioned officer, but his clothes looked like those of a sailor, and it really didn't look like he had the dignity and composure of a ship's captain. That probably meant that all of the commissioned officers in charge had died in the accident that had befallen this sub. Crew members crawled out of the hatch. Oh jeez, I heard that. One by one, but they all looked pale and entirely worn out.
Poor guys.
I'm not sure how long ago the accident happened, but being crammed together in a tiny sub filled with chlorine gas for any amount of time can't be any good for your health. Not only had the ventilators broken, but travelling about carelessly on the surface of the waters around Japan these days would be foolish in the extreme. It had been like a trip inside a can of poison gas. Almost all of them were unable to walk without leaning on someone else. It looked like a bunch of people staggering out of a hospital boat.
Ushiramiya, ask them who the captain is. Tell them that I am in charge of this island.
Welcome to Japan. Do any of you speak English? The crew members seemed to understand that I was speaking English, but it looked as though none of them could speak it. Eventually, someone who seemed to be dressed as an officer saluted. Welcome to Japan. Are you the captain? I cannot speak English. Please wait. The officer answered in slow, laborious English. After asking us to wait, he shouted something to his subordinates in rapid Italian. It looked as though he was telling them to get someone among them who could speak English.
Ushiramiya, what are they talking about?
They've asked us to wait. They might be looking for someone there who can speak English. At that moment, I heard a high-pitched cough. It wasn't a man's cough. It was a woman's.
Beatrice! I speak English.
As she came down from the hatch, a woman with beautiful golden hair said this in English. In this filthy cavern, the appearance of someone as beautiful as she was seemed like an angel descending upon us. Welcome to Japan. Is the captain there?
The captain is dead. That man over there is the only officer left.
My condolences. Can we do anything to assist you?
We'd like some fresh air and water. Some of us are still having trouble breathing. And we'd like a place to rest.
We would be happy to help. Do any of the others understand English?
The ones who did are all dead. I'm the only one left. Ushiramiya, what's that woman talking about? Who's that captain? That man from a second ago? Who is that woman? Get translating already, damn it!
The lieutenant has been yelling like that for a while now. He must have been surprised to see such a beautiful woman appear from a submarine, and more than a little annoyed to see all of her attention focused on me alone. It was a mark of how divinely beautiful she was. Sir, it seems that she's the only one who understands English. She will act as their interpreter. Their captain is dead. That officer seems to be acting in his place.
Who's that loud man who keeps yelling at you? Don't tell me he's your superior.
Unfortunately, he is. He probably doesn't like seeing me have such a beautiful lady all to myself.
Oh, I didn't expect flattery from an Asian. Your English is superb. I imagine you've been brought up very well. Unlike that rude man who just keeps shouting. That should have made you the officer in charge around here.
No, and I never expected flattery from a Westerner.
You're an interesting man. What's your name?
Ushiremiya, Kinzo. If you don't mind, may I ask for your name as well?
Beatrice Castiglione.
Welcome, Beatrice. Welcome to Japan. That was when I first met Beatrice, the woman who would capture my heart for the rest of my life.
So, Beatrice was an Italian.
Yes, she was the daughter of a high-ranking RSI official. Apparently their most important cargo was her father himself. Sadly, he had already died by the time they reached Rakenjima. Why would a high official like that come to Japan? You're saying he went through the Suez Canal and crossed the Indian Ocean to come all the way here?
That's a good point. If they wanted to reach one of their allies, Germany should have been much closer. So why would they make the long trip to Japan?
It may have been part of some grand, outrageous strategy. I don't know all the details, but shortly after, I learned that this submarine's mission was far from a minor one. They said that there had been about 60 of them at the time of their departure. However, only about 10 of them, including Beatrice, had survived. Their submarine had apparently hit a mine or something in the nearby waters and sustained a great deal of damage. They told us that it had flooded rapidly with water, which had taken out the batteries and released a large amount of chlorine gas. Their sub had become completely incapable of continuing further. Nothing but a massive lump of metal floating by the dock. Since the sub seemed to be carrying something of immense value, the higher-ups ordered us to investigate. After questioning the Italians, with Beatrice and me acting as double interpreters, we concluded that this thing of immense value must have been her father himself. Apparently, Beatrice's father was extremely high up in the RSI hierarchy, and it was thought that he might have worked alongside Mussolini himself. Though their massive voyage had apparently been part of some top-secret mission, now that the man himself and all of the commissioned officers had died, their reason for coming to Japan remained a mystery. And our higher-ups were telling us to investigate, which meant that even they didn't know what it was. Their ship had broken down, the mission was unknown, and the high official they had been carrying was dead. And even the Japanese government didn't know why they were here. The Italians' great and perilous voyage had come to a meaningless and utterly fruitless end.
That's a relief. I always assumed the seas of Japan would smell like soy sauce.
What a coincidence. I've always thought Italians' hair was made of pasta.
Of course we do. You don't know how hard it is to get that perfect al dente texture. I imagine you Japanese all wear spaghetti al nero.
I see you've done your homework. In Japan, we use squid ink instead of shampoo.
You really are amazing, Kinzo. It seems like you know everything. Have you ever been to Italy?
Never. I have read a lot of books, though.
An Asian man reading Italian books? Wow, what kinds of books?
Niccolo Machiavelli and Dante Alighieri. So I know, of course, that you're the Eternal Lady.
Oh, what a surprise. You must be quite the bookworm. Does this mean you come from some Japanese noble family?
Who knows?
You're completely different from those other savage-looking Japanese soldiers. I can tell. You must come from a noble family. The Ushiromiya's some sort of Japanese aristocrats. Everybody wants to be a cat. Because the cat...
They just managed to strike it rich in the spinning industry in recent generations. I didn't study all that as part of some noble's hobby. I just did it because I wasn't allowed to do anything else except read, play around with the roses, and get myself drunk. There had been no trace of malice in Beatrice's words. It had just been a curious question asked to a friend from a faraway country. However, Beatrice was from a noble family herself, so she could tell. She could see the faint gleaming look on Kinzo's face.
Forgive me, Kinzo. I didn't stop to consider why a high-class person like you would choose to take the position of a common soldier.
I don't give a damn about my family line. When I die, the name Ushiremiya will have no hold on me. Then I'll finally be free.
So, you joined the army because you wanted to die? You mustn't do that. Your family would be so sad.
Family? I have no family. I have a wife for the sake of public appearances, and children. However, I've never wanted any of them. Everything is a fleeting daydream, created by those selfish, greedy elders. So, at least while I'm on this island, I can forget about all of that, and find some peace. Peace. But haven't I spent each and every day complaining that I wasn't sent to the front and haven't managed to die yet?
I can't understand the pain you're going through, but I do realize that my thoughtless words have hurt you. Forgive me, Kinzo.
Forgive me, Kinzo. Yes, those words are probably what did it. All of the Japanese call me Ushiremiya. It reminded me that I was the property of the Ushiremiya family every time they talked to me. But she was different. She called me Kinzo, not Ushiremiya. So maybe, just for the time I chat with her like this, I can forget that cursed family.
Kinzo.
I hadn't meant to make Beatrice feel guilty, but she seemed certain that her thoughtless words had hurt me. Thank you. Huh? That was your line. Since you always call me Kinzo, I finally feel like I'm my own man. I think that I've finally met a person who truly sees me for who I am.
Kinzo, you may be a foreigner I met in a distant land, but I can tell that your heart is sensitive and beautiful. If we had grown up in the same neighborhood, I'm sure we would have become fast friends. I'm happy too. You always call me Beatrice, not the daughter of the Castiglione family.
We were both in the same position. Her Castiglione family must have been a rigid place as well. Though we came from different countries, we had finally found something that we both understood.
Do you have a nickname that people close to you use?
No, they usually just called me Kinzo.
Well then, you should stop calling me Beatrice. All of my close friends used to call me Biche. Is that how it's pronounced?
Pretty sure.
I'd like you to call me that too.
Very well. From this point onwards, allow me to call you Biche as a sign of our friendship. They were all just swearing at her.
I wasn't sure. Come on. There not. There we go. Don't be all stiff like that. We're already friends, okay?
A bright smile stretched across Beatrice's face. No matter how many decades pass, that smile will never fade from my memory.
What's so funny? Is it the rain?
Oh, I just kept him in young Kinzo voice.
So, by meeting Beatrice, you managed to regain your sense of self.
Or, as most people would put it, he cheated on his wife.
If you plan on continue being rude, I suggest you get in the habit of covering your butt.
After having his butt pinched once more, Will hopped around in pathetic agony.
So, in your eyes, grandfather, Rikanjima was always special because you first met Beatrice here.
Indeed. If I had never come to this island, I would never have met her. It truly is an island of miracles.
Is there anything left of that submarine base today?
Yes, it's still there, near Kuadorian. It's in the shadows of a cove that can't be seen from the outside. After all, fishermen never approach this supposedly ill-omened island. It's unlikely that anyone besides me still knows of its existence.
Is the 2 kilometer long underground passage between Kuadorian and the mansion a remnant of that base?
That is correct. There was some nonsense about fortifying several locations across the island and connecting them with tunnels carved out of limestone caverns. I made use of that underground passage and built 2 mansions, one at each end of the island.
Two mansions, 2 families. The Ushiromiya family mansion, and a mansion for the Kinzo released from the shackles of the family.
Correct. It was something I needed. Another place for me to escape from the cursed name of Ushiremiya.
Still, I do feel bad for you. It must be awful to have to come all the way out here and be unable to fulfill your mission.
I don't really know what Papa's plan was. Lies! He said we needed to run far away to hide it until the time came.
And what is it? Pennywise.
It took me too long to get that. I don't know. It was something very important. And he planned to hide it for many years until the right moment. Oh, and he planned to hide himself along with it. I know, because he apologized to me for sending us to live a long time on foreign soil.
Didn't that second lieutenant of yours say that you had no cargo in particular? And that you were transporting your father instead?
Lieutenant Angelo doesn't trust you or the others. Even I know a few things he's kept hidden from you. He might even know what Papa's goal was and what the cargo is. It's gold! Gold!
Whatever it is, that's a mission for the Italian military. It has nothing to do with us. After all, we're allies. We should be able to trust each other.
I have no doubts that you're a good person, Kinzo. I even told Lieutenant Angelo that you're a man we can trust, but why is it that men always get so rigid and uptight when they're in a strange land? Normally, they're all very bright and cheery people. Ever since we've come here, there's been this strange feeling of tension. Lieutenant Angelo has ordered that his subordinates be armed at all times. It's almost as if they're in enemy territory.
That was true. The Italians were clearly the very opposite of relaxed. The Japanese soldiers watching this began to suspect that the Italians didn't really trust them at all. That's normal for a soldier, and this is precisely the time for them to straighten up their guard, so they don't embarrass themselves in front of a friendly army.
What was that?
It's just, I don't know. I hear it all the time when I'm on a call with you.
Really?
Yeah, it's just like Discord stuff, I think.
Oh, I've not heard that before.
It's like, it has feedback from whatever audio I'm sharing.
Oh. They have a person stand watch every time they sleep. And they're still keeping a lookout to make sure none of you approach the submarine, even though it's nothing more than an unusable scrap heap now. It almost feels as though they're clearly prejudiced against the Japanese, and that bothers me.
True. They had set up a constant sentry by the submarine, and had refused to let any of the Japanese soldiers come near. This hadn't made the Japanese particularly happy. However, submarines are treated as classified in all countries. Maybe it was just natural for them to stop foreigners from approaching it without reason. They're probably uncomfortable with being made to live in a way they aren't used to. The boat that's supposed to take you back to the mainland is still being delayed by weather and problems up the command chain. Just how long will it take before they can send you there? We had been told that a boat was being sent from them directly from the mainland. Apparently, thanks to the weather, problems up the command chain, and the recent air raids, they had no ships they could spare on a forgotten island like this. There may have been political issues as well. After all, the Italians' homeland had already surrendered to the Allies. I didn't know the details. The only thing I knew for sure was that they'd been stuck on at Rikkenjima for 2 whole weeks, and no one had come to get them. Of course, we had some small boats on Rikkenjima. There was nothing physically stopping us from taking them to a nearby island. Still, Rikkenjima was technically a top-secret base, and contact with the outside world had been strictly forbidden.
It is forbidden! Well, there's nothing we can do about it, and it isn't all that bad, really. After all, if a boat did come from us, I'd probably never see you again, Kinzo.
True. To me, those 2 weeks were the first I'd ever truly lived. The faint 20 years before all seemed to vanish in the sparkle of that pair of weeks. I realized that she'd have to leave this place eventually, and yet this single moment felt so rich and dazzling that I felt myself wishing it could last forever. Then I heard a voice calling for Beatrice in Italian. It's Lieutenant Angelo. Looks like he wants you for something.
Oh, Lieutenant Angelo. Probably to scold me these days. He keeps on yapping about how I shouldn't get too friendly with the Japanese soldiers.
The second lieutenant approached, saluting Kinzo, and after glancing at Beatrice as though asking her to translate something, he began to speak in Italian. Judging by his tone, it sounded like something serious.
Lieutenant Angelo has something very important to say, so he wants to talk to your commanding officer. He wants your help with something. I don't know what.
Something important? Got it. I'll go find Lieutenant Yamamoto. Lieutenant Angelo had two of his subordinates with him and wore a stern expression on his face. They didn't have to say anything for us to realize that this had to be something very serious.
That's it! Lift it up!
The winch creaked, and the thick chains rang out with a dull clang. Very, very slowly, it was lifted up out of the submarine's cargo hold.
Now I get it. So this is why those Italians didn't want us near that sub.
The first lieutenant and the others looked up at what the winch was slowly lifting up. All of them were wearing unpleasant, forced smiles.
Unbelievable. So this is why Papa brought it all this way.
Incredible. I've never seen anything like this. It was a mountain of gold ingots. Those carefully piled bars were being slowly lifted out of the cargo hold, one after another. This gold had been their true cargo. I don't know where they were planning to take it. They might have been trying to sneak it onto Japan, one of their allies. Or they might have been on their way to hide it in some remote area. Was it some sort of strategy? A conspiracy? Embezzlement? Top secret transportation of wealth? This incomprehensible amount of gold led to all sorts of dark suspicions, but we didn't know anything about the truth. All told, the gold weighed an incredible 10 tons. That was the only truth we could wrap our minds around at the moment. They had strongly resisted showing this to us. However, the submarine could no longer make sea, and it was apparently continuing to take in water bit by bit. Rikenjima had been outfitted in an extremely slipshod way, so we had no means of repairing it. Also, though we could unload the sub, there was no way we'd be able to lift it up again once it had filled with water and sunk to the bottom. Now that transporting the gold away had clearly become an impossible goal, they had apparently decided on unloading it. Of course, they made no effort to explain the reason behind all this gold. They just asked us to help them take it out. Why would they take so much gold out of the country? Couldn't they have changed the course of the war with this much wealth?
Weapons change the course of war, but after the war they aren't useful for anything. Money can also change the course, but it just remains as valuable after the war.
There's no longer any way to change the course of this war. The Axis powers will probably all surrender, leading to an Allied victory. Anyone could tell that simply by looking at the Americans' planes flying across the sky day after day. However, gold does not lose its value after war. Everyone stared upwards, dumbfounded, as the winch slowly lifted the dully sparkling gold. There you go.
The Golden Land is
Beatrice's... You got the origin of Beatrice and the gold.
real. And where it is, in the cave. What does that have to do with the sweet fish?
The Sweetfish River was the train line. They went through that one.
Did we?
Yeah. They were like, it's not actually a river. So the train line from a certain place on a map.
I remember going over that. Oh wait, that was the end.
That was the end.
That was the end. Oh, okay.
Next time on historical drama, Kinzo and Beatrice die.
Oh my goodness.